Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Live from Coco's Cabinet. You are here live on Blast Radio or on my YouTube channel, and it's wonderful to have you. It's great to be here. It's Saturday night. It is February, very nearly the end of February, which is kind of hard to believe, but you know, we had Valentine's Day go by in a flash, and here we are working our way into the 20s of February, and then you know, it's March, and then it's April, and then it's May. And in my mind, as you know, if you're a longtime listener or subscriber, I am a high school English teacher, so I kind of live my life by the schedule, you know, when the next break is, I guess. So, you know, in my mind, we're getting through February, and then we're making our way to spring break in March, and then we've got prom and everything in April, and then we've got graduation in May, and then it's summer break. Somehow we made it, you know. Somehow we made it. So yeah, welcome everybody. It's been a fun day so far. I've been just kind of hanging out, enjoying a day off. I got a 3-day weekend this weekend with President's Day, so been enjoying being able to truly relax on a Saturday. You know, that 3-day weekend feeling, which is a very special feeling. So we're ready let's dive in. Let's kick off our show with our first segment of the night. Breaking news from around the web. That's right, folks. It is breaking news from around the web. And this week, it's been kind of a big week for weird independent horror, and not just that, but micro-budget horror. Micro-budget horror really having a moment right now. I would say, at least as far as I'm concerned, kind of sparked by the catalyst that was Terrifier 2. That was, of course, a success in a way that I don't think anybody expected. I've talked about it on the show before, where it was kind of became a lightning rod for the horror community. We all really kind of showed out for that one in a positive way. We had an opportunity to see a kind of an epic unrated slasher in the movie theater, and we came out in droves, and you know, it was a crazy success. $250,000 budget ended up making $15 million. Just a wild success, and really was I think a terrific movie. I know I've talked about before. I think I'll do some more defending of that film in the future in longer form and more kind of an analytically minded approach. But so, you know, the Terrifier 2 model is kind of the new wave, and certainly the hope that it will be as successful as something like Terrifier 2. So this week was sort of included two examples of that, and kind of from what I can tell, two examples from maybe two sides of the fence on this whole situation. So the first of those is the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey movie. And you heard that right. If you haven't heard of this is a slasher film featuring the characters from A.A. Milne's classic childhood book series, Winnie the Pooh. And so last year, Winnie the Pooh entered the public domain. This is the original Winnie the Pooh, not the Disney version. Entered public domain, and British filmmaker Rhys Frake Waterfield took the opportunity to make a slasher film in 8 days, and then the trailer for this slasher film went viral. It was purchased by a bigger production company, and they kind of gave him some more money to do a few more reshoots to kind of add to what he had. And then they put it in theaters, and it opened the week prior to this, so not this last week, in Latin America, and namely in Mexico, made $1 million in Mexico, just Mexico. And the budget for this is supposed to be around $100,000, so this is already wildly profitable. And then you have it's opened in America. It's been open for about this week, this past week, and it's made around $700,000. So it's nearly made it to $2 million against $100,000 budget, and the reviews have been really, really bad. And now I will say the reviews for Terrifier 2 were also, depending on where you were reading them, pretty negative and pretty harsh. But the reviews now I will also preface this by saying I have not seen it yet. But the reviews have largely kind of discussed that it feels like a really hollow cash in. And, that's what it looks like on the surface as well, right? Kind of take this beloved childhood property and turn it on its head. And now I'm not saying that can't, reap interesting results if done with care and properly. And I would love to believe that this is a case for that as well. And certainly everybody involved with the film, I'm sure they worked really hard, and it's an incredible thing to make. Any movie is a miracle. The work that it goes into making one of these and pulling it off is just sort of wild. So certainly pulling it off in 8 days as well. But what I worry about is that we are going to be in an attempt to cash in, where the people are kind of so desperate to save the theatrical world, that they're willing to release just about anything. The other example of this being, sort of a negative thing, I think, would be the Mean One that came out around Christmas time, the Grinch slasher movie, which by all accounts was also just bottom of the barrel, terrible. Didn't really want to be anything other than a cash in, and just counting on the fact that you would think it's shocking to see the Grinch murder somebody. And that's kind of what I'm hearing about Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, that it's just like, oh, look, Winnie the Pooh murdering somebody, and that's kind of the bulk. But I also heard some kind of unfortunate things about, all of the victims are, like, all of them are women, scantily clad women, and not in like a winky, like, hey, this is an old slasher trope way, but sort of like in a, I don't know, regressive way. But again, I'm saying a lot of this purely based on reading things online, and I don't like to make a final opinion, of course, without seeing the film. So I'll withhold my final judgment on that. But it does make me worry that this could be a trend with, production companies just throwing money at anything that could possibly have that Terrifier 2 success, But on the other hand, in that same vein, this week also saw the theatrical release this past week of the found footage horror film Outwaters, which looks to be a real attempt at kind of doing something new with the found footage subgenre, and is also getting really incredible reviews, and appears to be a very visceral experience. I was disappointed. Unfortunately, did not play anywhere near me theatrically. I just sort of counted on it being played here, because we did get Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. We did get Terrifier 2, but then not Outwaters. So I was a little disappointed that I didn't get to see it theatrically. But yesterday, it did premiere digitally on Screambox, which is quickly becoming a very interesting streaming platform for horror. Very well curated, thoughtfully curated films, and a lot of exclusives and cool things, like Freddy's Nightmares, the old TV shows, stuff like that, stuff that you can't always get elsewhere. So definitely want to check that out soon. Getting great reviews. I do not have any of the box office numbers, but the budget for the film was allegedly only $15,000. So you've got to imagine it probably made at least that in its limited theatrical release. And it's getting great reviews. So either way, it's been another good week for horror. It's a good time for horror. A lot of good stuff going on in the world. And, if we get a few Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honeys, you got to think that if these producers are throwing money at people. Yes, they're for every Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, maybe we'll get just as many Outwaters. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed for that. So again, kind of an exciting week for this micro budget trend. Good things happening, bad things happening, but things are happening in the world of horror, and that's always exciting and fun. So that's your news from around the web for this week. All around, just a good time to be a horror fan, an exciting time to be a fan of this wild and weird genre. But let's move on to our next segment here, where we visit the shelf. And there are often tales on that shelf. And I believe that is what this segment is entitled.
Now it's time for... Tales from the Shelf.
That's right, folks. It is time for Tales from the Shelf. This week, Tales from the Shelf, I am highlighting something that I recently acquired during Full Moon's semi-frequent annual quarterly. I have no idea how often they do it. They have, half off sale. Pretty often, actually, on their website through Full Moon Direct. If you've been following me since I started my Instagram page, what really kind of inspired me to start my Instagram page, Coco's Cabinet, last year, it's kind of nearing my 1-year anniversary, was the sharing my growing Full Moon collection on VHS, I was kind of in the process of falling in love with that studio, and in the process of falling in love, and I've mentioned this many times on the show, it's that wild, blissful period where I was reading every book I could and articles and watching every movie and feverishly collecting these things, and has been an obsession of mine since Full Moon, and reading all about the history of Charles Band's wild studio and all the people involved and the kind of passed through his world. It's a really interesting and wild story. I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to get some cool items from the Full Moon Direct store, but I did not expect to get as lucky as I feel like I did. My real win, my purchase that I made, was the Puppet Master Music Collection on vinyl. And if you are watching on my YouTube channel, you can see that wonderful cover there, a collection of the music that Richard Band composed for the Puppet Master films, all the way from the original in 1989 up to even Puppet Master 10 Axis Rising from 2012. On vinyl, the back has this wonderful picture of Blade with the composer outfit on, Blade the puppet, of course. It was only $8 on vinyl, and it's just a real exciting. I'm a huge fan of Richard Band's music, and from the beginning, when I started watching these Full Moon movies, noticed how wonderful his music was in these, often really ridiculous movies. And I kind of, from the get-go, really appreciated his music. And as I learned more and more about Richard Band and Charles Band and their whole story, it really just really became an additional obsession of mine. So what I did tonight, just to kind of do something special this evening, for tonight's Tales from the Shelf, I have actually prepared a little segment about Richard Band. I did some, this is kind of what I liked to do. I've had a show previous to this dedicated to the Twilight Zone, where I did these sort of almost like podcast essays over each episode. And I kind of feel like this is a little mini podcast essay about Richard Band and his contribution to Full Moon and the world of cult movies. So tonight's Tales from the Shelf, inspired by my recent acquisition of the Puppet Master the Music Collection on vinyl, featuring music by Richard Band. Please enjoy this little mini podcast essay segment about Richard Band and his incredible music. While his brother Charles' band has always been the public face of Full Moon Pictures, and certainly deserves the credit he receives for creating both Empire Productions and Full Moon Pictures, Richard Band's music has consistently remained the unsung hero of these outrageous and often deeply ridiculous films. Without fail, Band's haunting compositions elevated the on-screen schlock into something more. Something dangerously close to the profound. Who would have thought that a movie about cursed puppets could inspire a beautiful theme like this? If you know anything about Charles Band's wild and unique upbringing, then you know Richard's story as well. Their filmmaker father, Albert Band, moved the boys to Italy when Richard was 7 and Charles was 9. They spent their formative years enmeshed in the filmmaking world and the artistic counterculture scene that was all the rage in 1960s Italy. Although the filmmaking bug bit his brother Charles early, Richard was always drawn more to the world of music. In fact, he was a member of several successful rock groups that toured across Europe. When the decision was made to move the family back to the United States in the early 70s, Richard was extremely torn. His band had just been offered the chance to open for the Rolling Stones at an arena in Rome. Ultimately, Richard decided to join his family and return to America to try and make it in the music business in his new home, Los Angeles. Sadly, Richard found his new home packed to the gills with musicians just like him who were looking for their big break. Discouraged, Richard started working more with his brother Charles, first as an assistant director, but eventually in the role that would prove to be his calling, composer. Richard went to music school to receive formal training and ended up befriending Joel Goldsmith, son of legendary film composer Jerry Goldsmith, who presented him with his first music score opportunity. He and Joel would co-score the Charles Band-produced cult classic Laser Blast. Their budget? $1,000. Utilizing only 2 Yamaha CS80 synthesizers and stolen studio time, the two managed to put together a memorable score. For his next project, Richard would be making an enormous jump. Instead of 2 synths, Richard would be working with the London Philharmonic Orchestra, crafting the score for 1980's The Day Time Ended. Once again produced by his brother Charles, the film starred Christopher Lee and is universally considered not that great. Despite the low quality of the film, Richard's score for the film is stellar and provides the first example of how his music could elevate the sometimes questionable quality of his brother's films. Perhaps the finest example of this musical elevation is the music Richard composed for the 1981 film, The Alchemist. Directed by his brother Charles under the pseudonym James Amante, The Alchemist is a complete mess. It was universally panned upon its release and sadly doesn't have that wonderful so bad it's good charm that often saved the worst of Charles Band's output. Despite the atrocious quality of what we see on the screen, what we hear is, in a word, sublime. obviously, his brother felt the same, as he would reuse music from this score in 11 other films belonging to both his Empire era and his later Full Moon era. Creatively speaking, the years 1981 to 1984 represent a high point for Richard Band. He created memorable scores for films like The House on Sorority Row, Metal Storm, Mutant, and Sword Kill, which were defined by their lush arrangements and moving melodies. Richard would continue to work closely with his brother and scored most of the major Empire releases from 1981 to 1989, including the now iconic scores for classics like Reanimator and the fully electronic score for the underrated Rennie Harlin-directed 1987 film Prison. Then, in 1989, Richard would score the first film released by his brother's new studio, Full Moon Entertainment. That film, the original Puppet Master. Like the score for The Alchemist, Richard's brother Charles would reuse cues from this score in all the subsequent Puppet Master films, ensuring that viewers would always link André Toulon's puppets with Richard's music. Puppet Master became Full Moon's flagship franchise, and Richard Band became the studio's go-to composer. He would provide music for more than 30 films under the Full Moon banner, and continues to work in both film and television. When someone mentions Full Moon or Charles Band, you might conjure up images of over-the-top violence, scantily clad women, and questionable production quality. While these images are certainly warranted, Richard Band's music is just as important to the enduring legacy of Charles Band's B-movie empire. While Charlie gets most of the limelight, Richard Band deserves a place in the Cult Movie Hall of Fame. To be sure, he will always enjoy a distinguished place here in the cabinet. That was tonight's Tales from the Shelf with a little podcasty essay-style segment I produced earlier today on the inimitable Richard Band and his wonderful musical contributions to the world of cult cinema. As I mentioned before, big fan of Richard Band and very excited and proud to have this awesome vinyl in my collection, which is tonight's Tales from the Shelf. And it is fittingly tonight's next segment is also going to be focused on that release, which is, of course, our fan favorite.
Found Sounds.
That's right, Found Sounds, the segment of the show where I play audio from weird things that I collect. And I thought this week that, a vinyl of the music from the Puppet Master films on vinyl. I think I said a vinyl on vinyl. That is, maybe not the most common thing to have in your collection. So I wanted to celebrate that really tonight, to have that be our real focal point, is Richard Band and his music. So tonight's Found Sounds will feature the graveyard / main title of Puppet Master, composed and performed by Richard Band. And it's going to be coming to you tonight live from the vinyl release that I have shared with you, that I was so thrilled to get in their recent Full Moon 50% off sale. So please enjoy this Found Sounds tonight, coming to you directly from the vinyl. Sorry about that little bit of sound there from the that, of course, is part of the music that you're about to hear. My YouTube audience, you have lost the visual there because I am transitioning over to the turntable where I'm going to play once again from the vinyl Graveyard / main title. This is from Puppet Master 1 and, of course, reused in Puppet Master 2 and many subsequent films, but specifically those two films. Coming to you directly from the vinyl here on Live from Coco's Cabinet on Found Sounds.
Found Sounds.
That was Found Sounds featuring the cemetery / main title from Puppet Master and, of course, Puppet Master 2 and many others. Composed, performed, all written, everything by Richard Band. And prior to that, on tonight's Tales from the Shelf, also featured that segment there focused on Richard Band. Tonight's episode dedicated to the wonderful work that he contributed to the world of cult movies, all around notable, iconic contributions. So tonight, hope you enjoyed those two segments focused on the music of Richard Band, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode overall. It has been a delight to spend this Saturday evening with you. Tonight's episode featuring the segment dedicated to Richard Band. The information found within that segment was pulled from the resources like Confessions of a Puppet Master, written by Charles Band himself, and also the two indispensable books if you're interested in those studios. Full Moon, it came from the Video Isle, and Empire of the Bees, the wild movie world of Charles Band. That one focused on his Empire period, and then the first book, it came from the Video Isle, focused on the Full Moon period. Those are absolutely chock full of indispensable information. If you're interested in this stuff, get those books and read all about it. Just even barely scratch the surface with the slight bio that I gave you tonight of Richard Band. I will put links to those books in the show notes on Twitter. I will put a link as well. Instagram at Coco's Cabinet of Curiosities. Twitter at Coco's Cabinet. YouTube at Coco's Cabinet. I will have that in the notes under the episode as well. And of course, you can find me back here in 1 week live from Coco's Cabinet every week here on Blast Radio and on my YouTube channel. And as always, I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. If you feel like supporting the show, that is now very easy with Coco's Cabinet Plus. For as little as $3 a month, you can support the show. The link to do that is on my Buzzsprout website, which is my podcast hosting website. But that is also available in the show notes when this comes out as a podcast tomorrow. So if you feel like you want to spend $3, it'll go right back into the show, buying more equipment and fun things to feature on the show in the Found Sounds and Tales from the Shelf segments. So if that's something you want to do, that is available to you as an option. But thank you all so much for tuning in on YouTube or listening on Blast Radio. And I will see all of you, and I will speak to all of you next week here on Live from Coco's Cabinet.